I think a really big question, and maybe it's not the next one, but I do see it as one of the big questions in starting a guild after you get the guild name, of course, is what what is the size that we are going for? Because I feel like in a game like Ashes, size does in a way dictate how much content you can do at one time without shifting focus as time goes on. So
And
like if you're like a 100-man guild, chances are you're going to be, you know, a little bit more limited on what you can do, what your impact in the world is going to be.
yeah, and
um, sorry, I didn't mean to blow off that cap for the Axiom people, but
yeah, so it's interesting. Like a lot of games, like you don't have to worry about guild size that much. For the most part, the game decides it for you. Like World of
Yeah.
Warcraft, if you're a Mythic raiding guild, you need 25 like roster people and probably like 5 extras for fill-ins and stuff like that. And assuming they're all active, you can get away with a 30-person guild and you're set. And a lot of these theme park MMOs are like that. The question comes down to, as you said, now we're in a sandbox game or a sand park game, as they like to call Ashes. Yeah, how do you figure out what size you want? As you said, I have never run into a sandbox game where numbers did not trump pretty much everything else.
Well, and that's kind of what they're going for here, right? With this and getting into Ashes with this guild perk system. They're trying to say we are going to create guild perks that will help the 50-person guild compete on some level with the 100-person guild. The 100-person guild compete on some level with the 300-person guild. How well do you guys think that they're going to actually achieve this?
I think it kind of doesn't matter because people are if you're guild, I mean, Axiom, for example, let's say you go 1,000 guild members, but guild cap's 300. Okay, you guys are going to have 4 guilds. Like I don't know. I mean, whether that's the direction you guys actually go. I mean, you know, there's some people who don't want to deal with sister guild stuff, and so they'll use the internal guild cap as their guild cap. But you know, in a community that is focused on doing everything, they're less worried about the number size. They're just going to adjust their guild and the guilds within the guilds to fit within the game that they're wanting to play. I mean, I mentioned it earlier, like, you know, Legacy, they're probably going to have a massive number base unless it is extremely beneficial to have just like 200 solid people or something like that. But I mean, I see what they're trying to do, but I feel like the people who want to be big are going to be big anyways, and they'll work around it.
Yeah, and that's so more than the benefit of what the guild offers itself as in terms of size or the the benefits are either size or the perks, right? That itself is not what is going to hinder large guilds. What is going to hinder large guilds is the organizational side, the nightmare of trying to figure out how to get a bunch of 50-person guilds. And we may see large guilds who just don't want to deal with that organization side, just go with the 300-person guilds and get none of those guild perks. And this is all somewhat hypothetical, right? Because we don't know what the guild perks are. We don't know how far down each tree you need to go to get some of the good perks. We don't know how many points are left over when you go all the way down one tree. So we still don't know a lot of that yet, but the true guilds out there that can really coordinate will split themselves into a bunch of, 30, 40, 50-person guilds with all of these perks. But then you run into this issue of splintering where, you have your tight-knit little guild with you and you start getting different motivations and different priorities than the main group. And suddenly you might end up with a bunch of splintering. And people getting mad and drama within. So that's what I see being curbing big guilds more than the actual perks themselves.
Well, and how much do you really want to manage? And we've talked about this ad nauseum. I'm sure a lot of guilds have talked about this ad nauseum. But I'll speak. Give you guys a little behind the curtain with Axiom. We've talked about this. If we end up with 1,000 people, let's just assume. I'm not saying that that's our goal. I'm not saying that we're going to be just at 1,000. We might be 2,000. We might be 300. We're not really sure yet. But if you have 1,000, does it make sense to say, like Super said, okay, well, you chop yourself up into 4 guilds and you've got room in each of the guilds and all of that. But those guilds, I feel, tend to end up pretty cliquish. Is the meta then to say, okay, you know what? We're going to have 10 100-person guilds. We're going to have 20 50-person guilds. Is there a meta forming? Because I think that's always going to be the pull, right? Is the buffs that you're getting versus the guild management. And these two things are going to kind of pull each other apart. If you can manage 20, 50-person guilds, you'll be in great shape in Ashes. You'll have all the buffs, but you'll still have the numbers. But can that be done? That's going to be the really tricky question.
And then the other thing too is like, how much is guild based, right? Is owning a castle guild based? Because then only 50 people get the buff of owning a castle if that guild gets the castle, right? Versus 100%. At that point, you may want some 300-person guilds, and you're like, anyone in the, like, you lose out on these buffs as a 300-person guild, but you do get the buffs of the castle when we take a castle, because we're going to put 300 members in that position.
That's a really big thing, and I know Super always loves to bring it up, and it's one of my things as well. It's balance and it's choice, right? So are you getting, what buffs are you getting? What benefits are you getting? Because there is a benefit. And the example I always use is when you have a bunch of 50-person guilds, how many people type in /G who wants to run a dungeon? So really, who are you asking there? You're asking 50 people. So you're going to
even if there's another 2,000 a part of the overarching guild.
Exactly. Yeah. So it then takes, and I think this is not necessarily super awkward. It can be done and it can be done well. I don't know of a specific example, but you're taking all of the communication away from in-game and focusing it on Discord. And while we're all content creators here, we've all got monitors. We got monitors for day. I've got 2 monitors sitting right behind me. It's not an issue for us, but for a lot of average people, for the kid playing on a laptop, for the kid with just a standard computer, Alt Tab, minimize, then get the thing, then go over here, and then do this, and you have to balance around that, like, to make sure, hey, when you're asking for a dungeon run, ask in Discord, ask in TeamSpeak, ask in, I'm going to go back in time because we were talking about dial-up, Mumble, Ventrilo.
Oh man, Mumble. So Mumble. I always remember TeamSpeak and Ventrilo. I always forget about Mumble. Man, that just brought some memories.
Everyone ask on MySpace. Ask for dungeon runs on your MySpace group.
Well, there's another interesting thing I want to brought up, and this is something that I somewhat do agree with Zillin on. I know that's a controversial topic, but he proposed this issue of where you're going to have a lot more geographical based stuff. So if your guild, regardless of how it's split up, is all a part of one node, then you may just ask in your node chat. Instead of taking it out of game, instead of it being in Discord, you just ask in node chat, and hey, you may like that gives it options to all your allied guilds, anyone in the node that you're allied with. Like, and if there's a guild that no one likes in then that node, then even if they respond to you saying, yeah, we'll come along, you're just like, nah, no thanks, we're full.
Definitely, but it does present. And I guess this is kind of the overarching thing here. It does present challenges. And how do we best... So we're making the 2 guys in a Bard guild. How do we overcome these challenges? Where do we want to set our line?
And so I think the first thing is figure out what you want to do. And I'm not saying specifically whether you want to be PvE, PvP, crafting, or PvX. What content do you want to do in the game? Do you want to take a castle? Do you always want to be taking part in sieges every month? Do you want to be able to dictate some of the control on your server? Like, because in a game this size, there's a very good chance that things will be completely out of your control, and your little guild may find yourselves just pigeonholed into a certain thing or certain content, unable to get to some of the major farm zones, paying out the ass for resources you need to progress. And so I think that's the thing to figure out. Where do you want to be and how much control do you want?
Okay, I'm gonna lay it out, because I think that the 3 of us will go around for an hour and a half dancing around the topic before we say a number. And so I want to put the number out there.
Okay.
Here's how I want to structure the guild. I want a 300-person main guild, and I want a 300-person main guild because I think that creates community, right? I'm part of 2 guys in a Bard guild. And here's how I want to structure it, because I know that we'll grow. Because I mean, when you have 3 guys as good looking as us, I mean, I assume this guild's going to be 80% female. Like, they're just going to come flocking, guys. I'm sorry. It's just is what it is. I know what's going to happen. Everyone's going to be like, those guys are super cool. We've got clout. It happens. I get it. We don't chat. You guys are okay. It's fine. So here's what I then want to do. I want to create a bunch of then sub guilds that have gone into the perks very, very deeply. So the crafting perk, we've maxed that out. We've 100% maxed that out for that guild. And I want to then create a guild that's great with all the PvP buffs. And I want to create one that's great with, whatever other passives are needed and specific. And I want to create a way, and there might be a cooldown between this, so this is something to think about too, but I want to create a way where we keep lines of communication open with all the sub-alt guilds. And I want to make it so that if I'm in the main guild and I want to focus on crafting, I've gotten a lot of gatherables together. I'm going to focus on crafting. And this is going to be the month that I really go hardcore to crafting. I can leave the guild and join this other guild so that I can maximize my crafting. And then when I'm done doing my crafting, I will move back up into the main guild. That's how I want to structure it. So big circle here with small circles here.
How many little circles are you talking? What number are you putting this at then? In terms of
what is before the number of small circles? How many are in each small circle? So you got 300 in the main.
Whatever the amount is that allows us to maximize it. So if there's a crafting tree, however many points you need in that crafting tree, and then the rest of the points into size. Because what I want to accomplish there, and I'm going to use crafting as an example. Yeah, right, guys, I'm going to keep coming back to crafting as an example. I want their crafting benefit to be maximized out so they are the most efficient with crafting. And I want to then put the rest into size so that I can get as many people into that guild as possible that would like to do crafting for the main guild. And then it's also kind of an alt guild and things like that. You can throw alts in there. My crafting alt, I'm a blacksmith and I've got somebody who's a smelter. My smelter goes in there so that I can be sure to have enough blacksmithing stuff.
Okay, so what is your ideal size then? How many small guilds are you anticipating?
I want it based on the number of different branches in the passive tree that fully need to be maxed out. I don't think a PvE max out is necessary there. I don't think you need to put your hardcore raid team in the PvE max out. If they're a good enough raid team, they should be in the main guild. They shouldn't need these buffs. Like 3 or 4, right? We've got some PvP buffs for some world roamers. Maybe that guild is actually not part of your node. They're part of a military node, so they can go bounty hunt when they want to. You've got a crafting guild. They're in whatever economic metro is around. And you've got your main guild, and that's your home. And then one more for whatever, for sandal buffs or whatever Steven decides to put in there. And they wear a lot of sandals.
So my concern there is you at that point with, say, you're looking at about 500 people, you potentially have no control over your fate. I mean, to a degree, right? If you've got some huge guilds and if there's a bunch of 1,000-person guilds on your server and one guild of like 5,000, you may end up like very last in the pecking order, and you're going to have to spend a lot of time doing diplomacy. Some of these guilds might not even be willing to do any diplomacy. That 5,000 person guild may just be like, yeah, it's us versus the world. We'll take what we want. And you don't know what server you're going into. So you might just find yourself, in your little corner of the world, unable to really leave it, unable to go get certain resources you need to progress, not really seeing content. Like, if you're a 500-person guild and there's 5 1,000-person guilds on your server, they're probably going to be the ones taking or like having main control over the metropolises, having main control over the castles. Like, there's a good chance you may never see that content. And I'm not like, that's fine. If that's your thing. That's just my concern. And part of my thing with this game, and this is my philosophy on finding a guild, is I want to experience everything this game has to offer. So I may want to make sure that I'm in a guild that is large enough to not get locked out of any of that.
How many people does that take?
And that's I don't think we know the answer yet. I think
Mhm.
we have to see because of how freaking massive this game is, how many servers there are, how hard it is to organize a guild of that size. I think there's a lot of questions that we don't for sure know yet, but I am thinking that that number is going to be between 800 and 1,000 to guarantee you'll at least have some clout on a server. That's
So
what
I want to
I'm
throw
thinking.
something back.
Sure.
And I know Super's like, I can see in Super's eyes that he's ready to just fire off some answers here. But I want to throw something back at you real quick, Bard.
Sure.
So if you have 1,000 people and you've got a bunch of guilds, let's say you have 4 250 person guilds for the sake of easy numbers. That sounds like you're in your own alliance, and that'll be great for communication because you have alliance chat and it's just within your alliance. Do you think that then you are closed off from a lot more further diplomacy because you're not in an alliance with other different thinking people?
So I guess my point is, and I've seen it in games like Eve, where small guilds are forced to be in an alliance anyway to compete. And it's a 300 person guild being forced into an alliance with a couple thousand person guilds. And they basically have 300 people just don't really have much control or say on what's happening to them between who they're fighting, between any of this stuff. You're just in the alliance, and that's kind of what you have to do. And so I think it depends what we see forming overall, what the meta becomes. Where if 1,000 person guild is large enough to be an us versus them thing, then you are closing yourself off. Versus if 1,000 person guild is somewhere in the middle, you're going to be able to work with a bunch of smaller guilds who still want to look up to someone with numbers that can help them from being locked out of the content, as I'm saying.
Okay, fair point. I want to hear Super, but I want to point out Bardic was not brave enough to give us a number. Super, give me a number. How many
Wait, I
people are we
gave a
getting?
number.
Ish.
All right, 900. Right in the middle. Jesus Christ.
All right, 900. There we go. Super, give us a number.
300 with diplomacy.
Straight 300.
300, and then you use diplomacy to help fill the gaps in other places, other content, because it's either 300 in my head or it's 1,000. So
okay,
the reason for that being is you're either right at the max of what, of course this is based off of what the current max is, right? So if 300 stays the max, you got your guild perks, you can do what you want with, regardless of focus, that's a different discussion, just talking about the number side of it. But because I think that will allow you, in Bard's words, will allow you to give yourself your guild name or yourself as a character within the guild, allow you to give yourself enough clout based off of even the smaller community that you have. You're not just some random, extra number 5 running around in the background. Oh, that's Super from Virtue. I know Virtue, whatever. So that allows you to focus on, if you want to be the guild that is just dominates the waterways, you want to be the badass Navy guild, and, maybe 150, 200 of those 300 members are hard focused in that. They love doing that. But then if that changes, it's like, okay, we can go do the PvE stuff for a little bit. And then the people who want to be a part of the community, but don't necessarily want to be, hardcoring that specific thing, that's where the diplomacy comes in. Hey, we have 50, hey, Axiom, Virtue has 50 people over here. If we're on the same server, of course, so we have 50 people over here who are really fucking good at PvP. They want to go hard. They want to go in. Can we work something out to where, we take some of your Navy people, not like exchange guild members, but just take.
Watch this. We're just gonna enjoy this here for a moment. Hold on.
Where's your cloth? You're supposed to have a cloth on your arm, your forearm.
My girlfriend is a bad server, guys. She is not restaurant industry.
Yo, that hand's about to slap you instead of pour you a drink.
Correct.
That's great.
And so kind of using the diplomacy to be like, and again, not exchanging of guild members, but like, hey, we got 50 people. They're going to still have the virtue tag, but like they can come over and do some like PvP stuff with you guys. And if you have PvE, so there's room for negotiation and diplomacy there. But if you want the Axiom tag to do absolutely everything, the number in my head is no less than 1,000. I mean, because not only, and that's coming from the mindset of not only do you want to do everything, but you want to be one of the best at everything as well. And so that might be a different qualifying factor there, because a 300 person guild could do everything. They're just not going to be very good at it.